Namaste. I'd like to share with you something very, very interesting. And if you place yourself intellectually at a slightly higher level, you will be able to relate with what I'm saying. Uh, this is a kind of personal experience, and I am sharing this with you so that it reaches the right person at some juncture, and he gets the cues, he gets the hint, and maybe we can take the story further from here. It so happened that after about 12 years of working on the very deep foundations for the future format of education, I approached to someone known to me, known for more than 30 years, more than 30 years, and he is also definitely very entrepreneurial, very enterprising, because he owns a very, very large institution today, where I had some association with him as a staff member, as an employee, as a professor in that institution. So long story short, at one point of time, I realized that being employee, being associated with the old format of education is not going to be satisfying and rewarding and significant enough. In 2014, I had called off being a normal professor, which didn't mean that I'm disconnecting myself from education. In fact, I dived deeper into education to kind of understand where exactly the problem is in the education system, because everybody talks about the problems in education system, and both people within the education system and outside the education system can see it and can talk about it, but nobody practically was talking about the solutions for it. So in 2014, I took a very conscious call, very kind of a very audacious decision for me, a normal person with a family to support in the background, that I'll do something about education. And it took about 12, 13 years of work to understand both the sides properly, the deeper roots of the problem and understanding where the solutions are. Because understanding of problem is equally important, no doubt about it, but we need to also understand where the solutions are lying. And once I was, equipped with both a deep understanding of both the problem side and as well as the solution side, and once I had the frameworks and scalability plans in place, then I had approached to this gentleman who is very enterprising. In fact, I respect him as an entrepreneur. But then, when I approached to him, he was very appreciative in the first 2 minutes of our discussion. He asked me, as a normal course of opening the conversation, what are you doing these days? And I said that with last 12 years of working, I have been able to figure out those 6 critical turning points of life where the youngsters, after finishing their formal education, after starting their career, and those 6 critical turning points where they make mistakes, and as a result, the life management goes out of the boundary walls. They make mistakes. Now, he was a very smart person, definitely. He quickly understood and appreciated, and his response was, this is what is required. This is what is required. I mean, he was very appreciative that although he was running an empire out of formal degrees, vending machines, he had at least 20 departments in his institution, right from pharmacy to hospitality, from business management to sociology and social work. So there were not less than 15,000 students at any point of time in his institution for last 30 years. That is why he quickly understood the potential in the work that we have been doing. And he asked me to meet his advisor on digital marketing and digital strategies. And this is where before I discuss about my discussions with that digital marketing expert and strategist, let me bring out this idea which Robert Kiyosaki calls the 4 quadrants of finances or money or income. And he says that people settle down in their financial life from one of the 4 quadrangles. Either they choose to become employee, which he calls E, or they choose to become self-employed, which he calls S quadrant, or he says that people may choose to live their life from being a business owner. He calls it B quadrant. And finally, he says that few people understand the power of money, earning money, they become investors. He calls it I quadrant. So Robert Kiyosaki has given this 4 quadrants: E for employee, S for self-employed, B for business owners, and I for investors. And he goes on to say further that the thinking process, the way each quadrant looks at the world is absolutely different. How an employee looks at the world, at his future, is different from how a business owner looks at the world and his future, how a self-employed person looks at the world and his own future, and how an investor looks at the world and his own future. So their very psyche and their very, the state of mind, the way they analyze the surrounding and the factors is very, very different. Now this is what we can call a thinking model, which perhaps my dear friend, that entrepreneur, was missing, because maybe he did not read the books by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, coming to my discussion with his advisor, the digital marketing expert, he met me and definitely he analyzed our project. He did probing, asking questions: what are your strategies for this? What is the state of affairs with this program? And so on and so forth. So we had, I think, 2 or 3 rounds of back and forth discussion. But then ultimately, he felt the strategies you are taking is very organic, whereas what we need is inorganic strategies, self-compounding strategies, viral strategies, and something which can be handled entirely digitally. He didn't use exactly or precisely these words, but that was his mindset, that he was looking for a kind of project which could be scaled up digitally, which could be scaled up inorganically, entirely through the non-human interface, so to say. But having worked with the education sector for more than 30 years, understanding the science of learning, understanding the way human society evolves, I was giving a chance to what we can call organic strategies, where there is an interface for human interaction also. So the strategies which I was propagating is that there is a layer of mentors who take the programs forward, and they're given a dashboard. So it was a hybrid model where the mentors, the human layer, is inducted by, interviewed, and then trained by and onboarded by our organization. And then they are given a dashboard through which they can take the digital reach out. Each person, each mentor, each teacher, professor, and educator today has not less than 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 students or participants, society who are in touch with them. So the human layer would work as influencers for us, as a digital reach out layer for us, and who would take the message forward. And because of their own, the personal reputation and the kind of orientation they receive from us, and the kind of messaging which happens through them on an offline mode, the credibility of the entire program will remain intact. But of course, My dear friend who is digital marketing strategist was not in agreement with this methodology. He was of opinion that this is too tedious and this is too difficult to scale up this way, and definitely as a result he would have given negative feedback to his boss that this project is not worth adopting or taking up. Now, point is that where the owner, the person with the B-Quadrant psychology, understood the potential in our work in just 2 minutes, in just two sentences. This other gentleman who is digital marketing strategist, who is sitting in E-Quadrant, the employee quadrant, they did very different assessment. In spite of 3 detailed discussions, the person in E-Quadrant could not appreciate the potential in this kind of work. And of course, we have to understand that a person with E-Quadrant mindset will always first secure his position. So he will just not take a chance of giving a positive feedback, even if this project had failed by 1%, because the blame will come on him, that it is on your recommendation that I had adopted this project. Whereas the person in B-Quadrant might want to take that level of risk. I'm not saying that this business is risk-free. Definitely every business, every project has its own set of risks. But the approach to analyzing the risk-taking capacity for B-Quadrant and S-Quadrant and E-Quadrant and I-Quadrant are different. And these 2 gentlemen whom I'm talking about, they were sitting in 2 separate quadrants. The first person, the business owner, was sitting in B-Quadrant, and the second person was sitting in E-Quadrant, the digital marketing expert. Now, this is where we need to understand, drawing from AI jargons, you see what happens. The AI works on 3-step formula, 3-step framework. They call it, say for example, if it is an audio AI, then it will listen, then it will think, and then it will reply. Right? I mean, all of us use Alexa, right? What happens? The moment we say, Alexa, play soft music for me. So it listens, and then it thinks, and then it responds. And the same logic applies even in the written context. When we give a prompt to Gemini or ChatGPT, then it reads it, then thinks about it, and then responds it. So how does AI think? Because it has certain models fed into it. The next point which I am reiterating is very, very important for people at every level of experience, every level of wisdom. That dear friend of mine who is entrepreneur for more than 30 plus years, having an empire of institution where they would have trained not less than 5 lakh students in last 30 years. With that much experience also, in his thinking level, one model was missing. What was that missing model? The 4 quadrants which I just mentioned. Employee quadrants will think differently. B, the business owners will think differently. The I, investors will think differently. And the S, the self-employed, will think differently. If my dear friend, that entrepreneur, had this model, he would have understood that this is the decision which I cannot delegate to somebody with E-Quadrant thinking. This is a business decision. It needs to be analyzed through a business owner's lens, not from an employee's lens, not from an employee's way of thinking. If we had this thinking model being E, B, S, and I quadrant, if he had this thinking model, then after listening to my presentation or proposal, would you come with me as a partner for this project? He would have thought, this requires to be analyzed from a business owner's lens. And he would have responded by asking for a detailed presentation or detailed meeting with the board, where maybe he would not like to take decision alone, but he would have said that, okay, I'll sit with my partners or investors and let us have an in-depth discussion. I will interrogate you. I will diagnose the project. I was prepared for it. And definitely from their lens, from the lens of a business owner, when he would have seen this project, he would have been having a different perspective altogether compared to a feedback from an employee-minded subordinate that, sir, this project has certain drawbacks. It is designed to be scaled up in organic way. I mean, if he had asked me why we are going organic, there are 10 justifications for it. I mean, I could quote books, I could quote research papers. I mean, for example, Contagious talks not less than a dozen cases that how did Apple become such a loved brand within no time? Because there was a people element involved in it. People element, whatever digitalized we are today, people element is very, very important and vital. And to conclude my experience sharing with you, let me draw the point home. You and I use the WhatsApp today enormously. Who taught us using WhatsApp? Who taught us using Zoom meeting platform? Who taught us using Gmail? Who taught us using Telegram? Who taught us using artificial intelligence? It is someone whom we already knew, somebody in our family, somebody in our friend circle, somebody in our colleagues, and so on and so forth. So human element, human layer is how we connect with each other and learn from each other. This is integral part of the entire Advait framework, whether it's Advait Council for Social Research and Impact, AC-SRI, whether it is Advait Center for Incubation, ACI, or whether it is dozens of programs available on Advait Institute and its offline centers. We will meet in the next conversation once again. Namaste.